Greetings, everyone. I want to welcome all of you in the audience to this Yale career panel on AI and data sciences. And I'm very pleased about this session because although it was a very important topic, important career when we first conceived the idea, then Chat GPT came on the horizon afterwards and really created a stir. So this is quite a timely panel on this issue, and I am very pleased with the two panelists I have. Before I introduce them and we start the session, though, I want to say a couple things. One is we've done something like 60 of these covering all sorts of professions, whether it's architecture, music, you name it, legal, investment banking. They're all recorded. So if you want to watch the one on architecture, so forth, it's available. You can just go to yalecareerpanels.com and it'll give you the link. I also want to thank my other unindicted co-conspirators, Justin Koslin, Trish Takemoto, and Julia Son, all volunteers who essentially we work together to create this series, which we hope you find very valuable. And the only reason for doing this is because as much as Yale is a great school and you get a great education there, there's really not a source of, shall we say, candid information about different professions. They're not going to tell you about what's good and bad about being a lawyer, et cetera. So this is really designed to try to fill that gap and get some people who really know any specific profession to really give a balanced view. So these two panelists, who I'm very pleased to have today, have promised to be candid and have an even-handed rendition of what the careers in AI and data services are all about. And just briefly, I won't reread the invitation that you all got, but the two panelists, one is Sam Hendel, who is the co-founder of Datamnr, but he's been in a lot of different areas and created a lot of different things. Datamnr was one of the leading and early companies who really could search out data and help clients find out, get some insights on where events were heading or where risk profiles, et cetera. Very valuable for companies and governments, et cetera. And he can talk a little about that. But he also, as you see from his bio, is involved with a lot of other things, including music, et cetera. Deb Roy is proudly not a Yale graduate. He's at MIT, University of Waterloo. He's proud of it. But he is a professor at MIT of Media Arts and Sciences, and he directs the MIT Center for Constructive Communication. If you read through his bio, he's really had an extraordinary career working in all different aspects of how computers and technology intersect with media and understanding and so forth, including a few years at Twitter, correct, Deb? Where it's not his fault that they got into trouble. Our third panelist, Chat GPT, did not go to Yale either, but we added it, and we're going to add it in a very straightforward way. I took all the questions that I'm going to ask the panelists, and I ran it through Chat GPT, and I got the answers. And I was going to run it from into text to speech, but unfortunately, it would take too long to say verbally. So I'm just going to quote from Chat GPT for a couple of questions. So let's, and then the last thing I want to say is at the end of this, first of all, we're going to leave at the end for Q&A. And if you want to ask questions, you can just type them into the chat box and all the panelists will be able to see it. But the other, exactly at the end of the hour, I'm going to put everyone into what is called a fluid space. Essentially, it's a space where you can see everyone, you can see their faces, you can hear them talking, but you can move around and walk over to someone or walk away from them. Closer you get to them, the more you can hear, just like in real life. So it's a little bit like an electronic cocktail party. And our panelists are going to be in there for at least for a little while, but also to give a chance for many of you to meet each other and chat and connect. So this is the first time we've used it. So, but we hope that that it works. So with that, let's start out. I guess that the probably an important question, which is every profession has different segments, different areas. I mean, in law, you have litigation, you have judges, you have corporate law. I'm going to ask each of the panelists how they think the attendees here should think about the different buckets of artificial intelligence data services that they should think about as they're thinking about their careers. And I guess Sam, just arbitrarily, I'll start with you.
Sure. I think the good thing with this career is you don't have to be a technologist to do something in AI and data science. I'm a pretty good example of that. I started Datamnr. I went to Yale, got an econ degree. I've never taken a computer science class in my life, and I've been doing some interesting stuff around AI and data science. But the areas, and I'll talk from the Datamnr perspective. But our company is sort of a broad machine learning AI, real time AI business. But we hire across the spectrum. There are obviously the jobs sort of for the deep the deep tech jobs, which are we have a lot of PhDs in natural language processing at the company, a lot of engineers, database architecture, et cetera. And it's because we have a lot of complicated problems to answer. So there's certainly the need for people who have that skill set. But I think going a little less to tech, obviously product, how it connects to different industries, the different verticals that we sell. We have a robust sales force, and the majority of the company is sales and business development. So I think you can have a career in AI and data science without being an engineer, and it's really kind of everything around what the end product is. There are a lot of touch points that are touching human beings a lot. And even on the legal side, we have to handle privacy, other areas that are quite complicated around around this growing field, and make sure that we're being good stewards of information. So it's a robust opportunity set, and I'm still bullish. I think we're still in the early stages of some of the possibilities and what this technology will bring to society.
Yeah. So one of the messages is you don't have to be a computer scientist to have a heavy involvement with AI. I guess basically you're saying, right?
Yeah, because I mean I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm not a technologist at all, and have been quite active, data miner, and then in a number of other areas that you alluded to earlier.
Yeah, Deb, your answer to what are the different segments we're thinking about?
No, I think Sam gave a really good comprehensive answer. I agree that it touches so many different areas, and so backgrounds in a variety of areas can come together and participate. And I think if anything, those who do have a concentration in AI, machine learning, kind of these areas, data science, the kind of overlapping definitions, sometimes may be disappointed to see just how much those other areas actually matter, and to actually get to the the dream part of this for someone who's just really focused on the machine learning is to build that machine that teaches itself or kind of self-learns. That a lot of the data engineering and the kind of cleaning of data so that it is machine ready, and the infrastructure to be able to do things at a reasonable scale, sort of on one side can occupy a huge amount of the effort of an individual or a team. And then to actually bring it into a product, there's a whole set of other complexities which go beyond the sort of what is the core of what makes something an AI system, or a machine learning system.
And the reality is, though, a lot of people think of AI as something recent, but it's actually been around for a long time, right? If you really go back to in history, it's been around. Well, it just hasn't gotten as much publicity as it's getting now, but it's been developing for a long time. Do you think there's any particular reason why suddenly it's become such a top of mind for so many people? Either one of you.
Sam, go ahead.
Oh, I think there was, and I'll go to OpenAI. I think this has been happening for a while. There are a lot of businesses that are being automated. There's nothing new here. I mean, going back to toll booths going away and having, and I guess AI goes hand in hand with just technology in general. But I think the OpenAI developments over the summer, DALL-E 2, Stable Diffusion, et cetera, have sort of gotten people more excited about not just, this is not just a science project anymore. And chat and then you have chat GPT come along, which anybody can, you can go on a website right now and put in some terms and have it generate a painting. You can go and tell a machine to do your homework, and it'll do your homework for you. It's pretty remarkable that how tangible the recent developments have been. And I think that's getting more excitement around it. But Peter, you're right. Like, this has been an area that has been advancing for a long time. And I think we're still in the early innings of how this changes society. And I'm hoping it changes it for the better. But I think there are a lot of questions. People are cheating on tests right now using ChatGPT, and writing papers using it. It has obviously a lot of good positive things, but I think there are a lot of externalities that are going to be tricky for all of us to navigate.
Oh, come on, Sam. No Yaleys would ever do that, right? Only guys from MIT, right, Deb?
I was in a coffee shop having a meeting last week, and I see a student using ChatGPT for their homework.
Yeah. It is an issue. So I mean, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll just say that the my PhD in the late 90s was in language modeling. I was working on machines that learn to link vision and language. And what I see happening today is in many ways unrecognizable from now. It's a long time ago that I was doing that work, but there have, in some ways, Peter, it's absolutely true that what the field of AI, and which, by the way, has many areas beyond what currently, it has gotten this incredible mainstream focus. I mean, it's really strange to see terms like large language models and transformers being used in the popular press, right? There is a long history to the field. That said, there have been a couple of, in my opinion, stunning developments. And what ChatGPT did in particular is create an extraordinarily easy to use interface, a dialogue interface, which was actually possible because of another layer of reinforcement learning added to a large language model. But there's been a series of advances in the last couple of years on these large language models, where essentially by just taking a set of techniques that there's a pretty continuous path. There's definitely been some innovations in the kind of core algorithms for how these systems learn, but by just feeding them an enormous amount of data and having the compute power to set, the kind of basis of these models are essentially, my daughter was just asking me, she's learning how to program, what does it mean for a machine to learn? It's like, well, humans write software, but then that software is actually changing parameters, right? You expose the system to data, and that data shapes internal parameters, basically floating point numbers. The ChatGPT model, as kind of one example, has 175 billion parameters, and that's not even now the largest. There are models within Google that are 2 to 3 times that size, and it has been a surprise to everyone, including everyone in the field, that just with far more data and compute power, there are these emergent new capabilities in these models. And so, one of the things that I've just been personally surprised by, I'm kind of obsessed with ChatGPT, trying to find the limits of what it actually is able to represent in terms of linguistic knowledge. There's just I think, a remarkable range of what these models have acquired, but no human went in and specifically taught this model how to generate poems and all the various things that, if you just look around now, the model is able to do. That, combined with the fact that suddenly you don't need to be a programmer or have any technical background at all. You just know how to type and use natural language, that you can interface with one of the most powerful models out there. It has led to this, I think, watershed moment, right? Where you have, there's now a race to create these foundation models that will have similar interfaces, and the ability to, for a high schooler to write a few lines of code and tap into one of these models and create um, extraordinary capability. So I do think something has changed. Yes, it's sort of the same thing, just on a progression, but in some ways I feel like we turned a corner in terms
Yeah,
of
and actually, the co-founder of OpenAI was quoted the other day as saying, "We're really very, very early. Although it's been worked on for a long, long time, we're really, really early in what the potential is." Now, that leads to the next question, which is, where are the AI professions heading, good and bad, and will it vary by sector? Now, arbitrarily, I'm going to let Chat GPT answer this question first. So, and I won't read every word because it's wordy, but it says the field of AI is rapidly evolving, and growing, and there's a high demand for professionals with skills in AI and data sciences across many, many industries. Some of the key developments are: one, increased automation; two, advances in natural language processing and computer vision; three, increase in data privacy and security concerns, a big issue; four, more AI powered products, and that's clearly the case; five, growing use of AI in healthcare in things such as diagnosis or drug development, patient monitoring. But Chat GPT ends with the following comments: that the impact of these trends will vary by sector, with some industries such as finance, healthcare, and retail being early adopters, while others are still in the process of adoption. However, it is worth noting that the use of AI can also lead to job displacement as machines take over tasks that were previously done by humans. And this is probably the most important sentence that it said: it is important for individuals to keep themselves updated with the latest trends and skills on the field to stay relevant in the job market. So that was Chat GPT's answer to
Pretty
what's
spot on. Yep.
yeah. Now, Sam, your comments or criticisms or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's right. I mean, I will echo that it's early, and this is pervading. For years, a lot of corporates have had data science. They've had data science teams. Like most major companies have data science teams. I think that's been sort of critical, whether it's B2B or B2C businesses, and I think that trend will continue, and this use is going to be more part of our of everybody's day, part of our jobs, part of our experience, part of writing emails, writing sales emails, writing hopefully emails to friends won't be displaced, but long ones might be. I think that's spot on. That's kind of how I'm thinking about it. It's early stage. Every major company will have to consider how they're connecting to and using AI to better create customer experience or to be more efficient in their business. And they're right on the job side. But you're having that with automation has happened anyway. But I think some of these things will accelerate. Technology will replace the need for some human touch, but I think there will always be a place for human creativity. I don't think we're there and having the real creative side be displaced anytime soon. But there's a lot of things that journalism is going to be deeply affected by these innovations is one area.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of different verticals will have effect by this technology.
Yeah. In fact, it's useful to go back and look at similar innovations, like, for example, robots, right? Robotics. which became, shall we say, more viable 20, 30 years ago, but to see how it affected jobs and job markets and job creation and destruction is very interesting. Deb, your comment about, again, the question is, where is the profession heading, good and bad?
I think that it does seem like ChatGPT makes some good points about the need to keep tracking the progress, because it's going to keep evolving. I think the vast number of experiments now underway of how to leverage some of these new capabilities is going to lead to outcomes that none of us can predict. Definitely, to Sam's point, some of the efficiencies. I know of many companies where management has already given directives: start using ChatGPT, right, in your work, whatever that means. I am involved with a small startup called Cortico. It's a nonprofit, but we have a software platform for processing language, and we have been getting a lot of inbound from our clients, our partners, asking us simultaneously two things. Very eager to hear how we are going to integrate some of the newest AI capabilities into our tech stack, which includes the ability to analyze recordings of sort of speech recordings, but simultaneously asking, and how will we be able to trust what it does? Because as you automate, and there's judgment and decisions to be made, there's also, thankfully, a lot of awareness about the problems of potential bias and blind spots and so forth in these models. So how this kind of new capability gets integrated into various tasks, if you're summarizing legal documents or generating legal documents, right? What are the potential, not just errors, but let's say more subtle kinds of biases, right? And every time you generate a summary, you are destroying information, right? You're making selective judgment of what is important, what matters. Will there be new professions to proof check, sort of check the work of AI, right? Or
I would just add, I have a friend who's an attorney who is using ChatGPT to generate, the start of first draft of briefs.
Yeah.
And even, it can pull, it's not there yet, but they can pull case law. It's pretty wild stuff, but we still need human beings to be, oversee, sort of, editing, and it'll take a very, very long time for all the lawyers to go away.
And I think also one of the issues, which of course Google has been trying to point out, is the issue of accuracy, right? Which is part of some of the AI isn't, like ChatGPT is not entirely accurate. It pulls things from it, but doesn't necessarily fact check everything. So that's going to be an issue as well, which is in part the dilemma on when you want to use it.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a super important issue for certain applications. Another, one of the main ways that I know, including some colleagues, are already experimenting with or using ChatGPT is to rewrite emails or to generate communications. And one of the obvious consequences of that will be deteriorating trust between people, because you won't know if, first of all, did a human actually write that? Did Peter actually write that note that I just got in my inbox? And so that's going to change a lot of things, right? So what does that mean in terms of careers? I don't know. I mean, Sam, Peter, what do you think? If proliferation of this kind of technology deteriorates trust between people, but we need trust to get things done.
Well, to answer your question, I do think at least one thing is clear, is that none of us have an active enough imagination to be able to figure out the jobs that are created as a result of some of this. I mean, a good example is, until 1900s, it was horses and buggies, right? That was that. And the car came along. And the only thing that was clear is it kind of destroyed the buggy business, right? Didn't there? You didn't need as many horses, but there's still horses around. But then the automotive industry created a huge number of jobs. So, but how? I'm sure if you went back to that era and read what people said, they probably had a hard time trying to figure out where the new jobs were creating. It's probably easier to figure out where the jobs are going to be destroyed. A lot harder to figure out what the new ones are going to be.
Yeah, I mean, all these technologies make people more efficient. Like
Right.
they make people significantly more efficient potentially. I think that we're still early in how good the technology is to make it look like you actually wrote the email. But I'll do music as an example, and I'm quite active in the music space. I invested in a generative AI for music company kind of early in 2022. Um, and there are a couple of businesses out there where they are, you type in some parameters. And my daughter and I had, made a song on this app called Boomy, Boomy. We have a
Mhm.
song on Spotify, and it's pretty decent. It has her voice. I had human editing on it, but it doesn't, it's not gonna, it's not top 40. But what a lot of the professional musicians are using, they're starting to use these beat generators, these AI tools to
Right.
generate their beats, and then put the human curation around them to make them sound good. And that's it's actually quite pervasive. A lot of the major producers are getting their ideas, and rather than taking a sample from an old song, they're generating it and then playing around. I think that's going to go across a lot of these different different sectors. It makes people more efficient. It's a good starting point, but it still takes the human touch to create a song that that's out there and sounds good. And I think it takes a human touch to write a paper that sounds or write an email that sounds personal.
So that leads us to our next question, which is what are the myths versus realities about AI? And this is the second and probably the last time I'm going to quote ChatGPT. So ChatGPT says, well, there are a lot of myths and misconceptions about AI due to popular culture and media portrayals. Here are a few common myths and realities. Myth one: AI can think and make decisions like humans. Reality: AI systems can simulate human like thinking and decision making, but they're not sentient or capable of independent thought. They're programmed to perform specific tasks and make decisions based on data they're trained on. Myth number two: AI will replace all jobs. Reality: AI is expected to automate some jobs, but will also create new jobs and opportunities. Many experts believe that AI will augment human capabilities rather than replace them entirely, similar to what you're saying, Sam. Uh, Three: myth: AI is new technology. Reality: the concept of AI has been around for decades, and the field has made significant progress in recent years, but it's still a relatively young field with lots of room for growth. And next to last, myth: AI is exclusively used in high tech industries. That's an interesting one. Reality: AI is being used in a wide range of industries such as healthcare, finance, retail, and transportation. And AI is being used to augment human capabilities in these sectors. And last, AI is infallible and makes no mistakes. Reality: AI systems are only as good as the data they're trained on and the algorithms used to build them. They can be prone to errors and biases, and it's important to monitor their performance and make adjustments as needed, as we talked about before, right? Which is reliability, so forth. So that was Chat GPT's answer to what are the myths and realities of AI. So let me turn it over to my distinguished panelist, Sam.
Yeah, I think I do think some of the science fiction movies that we've seen, there is an existential, thought around, Skynet, from Terminator, all that, Westworld. Um, it's a little spooky sometimes that we think that there's, what's the one with Joaquin Phoenix? Her is a great one, which really gets into the emotional side of it. Um, I think some of hopefully not the Skynet stuff, but I think some of that stuff is going to move a little bit in that direction where, right now we're going to see a lot of efficiency. It's here to stay. Like there's no fighting it. I think it's actually extraordinarily excited, but I think there could be some uses of AI that can be damaging to society, can hurt our children not being able to I have 3 young kids. Um, you know, are they going to be using this instead of really learning how to write properly? What does that do to society? The sentientness. It's all sci-fi film, but these systems, they're at the early stages of being able to communicate, and I think there have to be some real guardrails around it. I don't think I'm smart enough to figure it out, but I do think there need to be some guardrails around how deep these systems get and what we do with them.
Yeah, and for example, Sam, your comment about your kids, spell check is, I think, one of the worst possible things in terms of education, right? It doesn't force people to figure out how to spell things, right, in advance.
I think the good part though is that they don't need it's the calculator. The calculator has made things more efficient. Hopefully, this is another thing that makes people more efficient, but you still have to kind of learn it at the end of the day. And obviously, we can force kids to be in school with a pen and paper. But I think this should make everything more efficient, and hopefully makes education more efficient. There are good parts here too.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
I think efficiency is a part of the story, but I don't, from my point of view, not really the whole picture. Maybe just kind of respond to a couple of things, Sam, you've said in terms of the creativity. I've just in experimenting. I mean, and we've been talking more about ChatGPT, but of course with Midjourney and DALL-E, the kind of visual creativity is of some of these generative systems is astonishing. But I've also found with a little effort, ChatGPT will produce surprisingly creative, piece of content. So it's I don't think the surprising elements or sort of the potential here is merely efficiency. There's other possibilities. I think when I go to education, I don't actually share the concern that I've heard many express. I mean, I get it, the problems of turning to the machine to write your essay for you. I do think there's some parallels with concerns in a former era of calculators. I actually I'm curious now what I'm sure, or I would hope, impact analyses have been done of what happened with the pervasive availability of calculators. I can imagine some people never really developed kind of mathematical or sort of basic numerical thinking, and others perhaps used it as a scaffolding, kind of bicycle for the mind, and are able to do more advanced things. So I don't know what the net result is, but I imagine there'll be a similar kind of diversity of ways in which having the machine write the essay for you could help or hurt. I have a different kind of concern, which is just from the social, emotional dimension. It goes back to my concern about trust, that if because of efficiency, there's just less human beings actually communicating with one another, and we're letting the machines do it for us. The machines are actually mediating and getting between human relationships. That seems to me a problem. If we can create incredibly well-tuned, personalized tutors, which is my expectation. You can already see it in the just playing with these systems. That there's a possibility that children of the future will be raised mainly by machines. And if we just focus on the kind of information processing dimensions of what school is about, and passing tests and all of that, then the best way to optimize a child's learning experience might be to just cut them off from all other humans and just let this, very well-tuned AI tutor teach the child. I think these are examples, whether it is in the workplace or elsewhere, machines doing the communication between people, or our children being raised by machines. that to me is the dystopian turn that some of these capabilities could easily enable. And I totally agree, Sam, that there's sort of real efficiencies here, but in seeking those efficiencies, which is a natural thing we will do, companies will do, individuals will do, there could be unintended consequences, which are some of the real challenges.
Yeah. So, by the way, one thing in reaction to what you said, Sam, about making humans more efficient, sometimes human beings, they take the efficiency and then they find a way to throw it away. I'm in investment banking, and it used to be before spreadsheets, you really had to think about, okay, what are the key variables that really matter in this financing or M&A transaction? Because you really want to think about it, because you had to do by hand, and then if you want to change it, you have to do by hand. When they invented spreadsheets, all they sadly, rather than use saying, okay, I can take something that it was good that took me 5 hours and do an hour, they managed to say, well, let's do 50 LBO runs or whatever. But they don't necessarily end up with a better answer. So sadly, increased efficiency doesn't always make things more productive. The next thing is, we have a lot of people in the audience, and I'm sure many of them are sort of saying, "Oh, where do I fit in to this evolving this industry, and am I really a good fit? Do I have the skills and personality traits that are compatible for success?" Now, the challenge in this area is really, as Sam said, the problem is there are many different jobs within that profession, right? So it makes it a little bit challenging, but we'll still try to answer, which is, if you're sitting down with any one of the people who are in the audience one-on-one, and they said, well, tell me, what are the skills that you think I really should have, and if I'm going to be successful, what would your answer be?
Well, start. I mean, I really think given there's so many different variables, like I would know that I would not have the skills to be an engineer in any of these companies. So I think starting from there, but if someone, obviously, their advanced degrees, great, and classes and great things you can do on the computer science side. But I always start with, do you see this industry, this vertical, as something that you can be passionate about and be interested in, and see where your skill set takes you in those various fields? I think it really depends on what someone's, sort of background is. Are they an engineer? Are they a business development sales person? Because the AI data science complexity of it, most of it translates into understanding a business and being able to sell a product. You don't have to have an expertise in AI or in data science to work at a company that is in that business at all. So I think it's very, very broad, and I think hopefully people are finding jobs in industries and verticals that are interesting to them, and most of them in the future, a lot of things are just going to touch this, data science AI, whether or not the individual has anything to do with that part or not. I don't think people need to have a broad, deep understanding of artificial intelligence to be able to work effectively in one of those industries.
But you're right. You really have to have a passion for something. Otherwise, it just becomes a job. And I know that, I've been in investment banking for many years, and when they interview entry level people for sales and trading, and the buy and sell side, one of the first questions I said, when you were growing up, did you like to trade stocks? Were you always thinking about it? And if the answer is no, they have no innate passion for that part of the finance world, and unlikely to do well. So I think you're right. Now, you still have to be good at whatever you want to do, but
Yeah.
it's very helpful to start out with a passion for it and an interest. Deb, your answer about what are the things that you have to have if you're going to be successful in AI, and what are the ones that if you don't have them, and maybe it's still okay.
Yeah, I think you guys covered it. Having that intrinsic curiosity, when it comes to AI, the idea of a machine that has intelligence, right, that can do intelligent things, or in machine learning, the idea of a system that can learn and get better sort of on its own. If that's not something that's intrinsically interesting or has been an area, that has made you curious, but instead it's because it's the hot thing that everyone's talking about, the latter might be a recipe for being unhappy in time. And then I guess I'll just repeat a point I made earlier, which is if you do have that curiosity and that interest, the good news is there's many ways to enter into that space, even if you don't, as Sam has pointed out, even if you don't have a computer science or kind of machine learning kind of advanced degree. And on the other hand, if you do, a lot of the companies and the sort of roles that will be generally AI or machine learning, actual day-to-day work, much of it is not. My experience now, it's a little bit dated, but I had co-founded a company called Bluefin Labs. That's how I ended up at Twitter, just a decade ago. But it grew out of a machine learning. It was my co-founder, Michael Fleischman, did his PhD on a machine learning algorithm, and that was the basis of the company the two of us built. And ultimately, out of, I don't know, there's 55 people at the company when it was acquired by Twitter. At most, there were 7, 8 people who were really working on what you would call machine learning AI, and the rest were, the whole full stack in terms of data engineering and DevOps and front end, and then the sales and the client support and communications. I mean, but the whole company was focused around a single product, which was based on a kind of machine learning AI capability. And yet most of the people were not working on that, that core capability.
By the way, Deb and Sam, I know we have booted, we chat GPT off the stage, but of the 7 things that they listed as characteristics were key for being successful, one they listed, Sam, as passion for technology and innovation. So what you listed was one of what it listed as well, along with some other things like curiosity and creativity and analytical skills, et cetera, as well.
Can I make one other point? I think that there's also a growing need and more and more roles, kind of an AI policy, trust and safety. Just these are areas that are going to be growth industries for sure, because there is this massive now experimentation and integration of these rapidly advancing capabilities. Exactly where the guardrails need to be, what the checks and balances to make sure you don't actually end up doing more damage than good is going to create, I think, a lot of new roles. So I agree totally with you, Peter, that we can't imagine exactly what's going to happen, but that is already happening. The need for people in policy and in sort of trust and safety to be able to evaluate and understand and create guardrails. And I don't mean just in the tech sector, but if you are using this as a tool for legal purposes, knowing exactly where the errors may creep in, or where the limitations of that technology will be really important to have people who focus on that.
Yeah. A brief note to our attendees. I'd like, we're 15 minutes away from the panels, and then before we go into the fluid space, if you have questions, please type them in the chat box, and we'll be able to see them. And we'll keep going until we see some questions showing up that the panelists should answer. I'm going to turn the last question around the other way around and just saying, now, the two of you have had careers for some time in things that are AI related, certainly data services, et cetera. Of the people who have really haven't made it, who didn't succeed, and I'm sure you've seen people who just either crashed and burned or just didn't work, whatever, or got stalled. What are the characteristics of those people that you think caused them not to succeed? either organizationally or skills based and so forth. It's kind of the upside down version of what are the group skills necessary.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. I mean, I think that if I think it's hard to do a job that you don't like, and and sometimes people go down a career path that might not be the best suited for them, and they ended up at a company or doing something that they're not super into or they're not super good at. And I think that one of the best. If I always say, if you want to pivot, the business school is a great place to pivot for people of my skill set, because I'm not a technologist or some sort of school. But there are things you can do to sort of pivot your career if you don't think you're in the right spot. Um, but if you like doing something and it speaks to you, I think those people generally do pretty well if they're in the right spot.
Dad?
Yeah, when you're talking about crashing and burning, it sounded like you meant startups and companies, and I would say the number one characteristic is just uh, you're describing the unlucky ones. Because when I think about why we had a success with our company, I think a lot of it was not because of anything specific we did. I mean, to Sam's point, if you don't enjoy what you're doing and you don't put everything into it, chances are you're not going to succeed. But there's so much that is outside of your control. When you're talking about crashing and burning, I was mapping that to companies or startups. At an individual level, it is, again, just staying true to your passions and not, there's definitely the shiny object syndrome right now with, with AI, to just make sure that that's not the primary reason that you're being pulled in. I think your story, Peter, of were you interested in stocks and trading when you were a kid? It's a great question, right? Because there's very different reasons why you might be attracted to financial services. But if it doesn't map to your underlying interest,
And Peter, that was my first job, working at a sales and trading floor for UBS.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, speaking of the shiny objects, it's a great phrase that you mentioned. I mean, great example of that is there's so many TV shows on forensic science. You got Bones, you got NCI, and now you got NCIS, LA, you got NCIS, Hawaii, whatever, and you've got all these, and as a result, there are a flood of young people going to forensic science programs. But if you actually go and spend a day at the New York Police Department Forensic Science, they don't have these LED screens and all this fancy lighting or whatever. So I do feel that it's very important. So Deb, your point is very important, which is the people here in the audience look past the shiny object issue and try to see through what part of it is just hype versus what will reality. The other is the reality is it's like if you go to med school now, what's relevant is what is it going to be like to be a doctor 10 to 20 years from now, not today. So you have to do a little bit of forecasting and say, to the extent that I can figure out where things are headed, am I a match? I think the last point I would make is the profession, the field itself is only one variable. So, for example, I know people who thrive working at a large investment bank. I know people who hated working at a large investment bank, but once they went to a small boutique and the interpersonal things and the politics are different, they loved it. So make sure you also look at the structure of the entity that you're in and whether that's a fit with you or not, and the people, because that's just as important as whether you are excited by AI, right? I'm sure that two panelists can comment on that, right? Because the two of you have been in all different kinds of structures, right? In different fields. Any comments along those lines? Because this is equally important.
I think you're spot on. The people side, I mean, is like life's short. Like, who wants to work with people who you don't like? The people side's super important. I've gotten really lucky, doing things with great people. Really, my Datamnr is my college roommate and the guy who lived across the hall from me at Yale. Um, I had the best of both worlds. I was never an employee of Datamnr, but I founded it with, when we built the product for my use case. Best of both worlds. It was great people. And that's the one thing I see some questions from students in the Q&A, like surround yourself with great people at school. And, going back to the career question, you stumble into really interesting things, but by networking and being in the right place at the right time in a lot of ways. But I do think that people's career happiness has to be something that connects with them, but also being put in a situation with high quality people makes you work harder and work better and have more fun doing it.
So speaking of that, we have a couple of questions. Can the two of you, the two panelists, can you see I see 3 questions on my screen here. So
It might be 2 in my comment, telling someone to go for it. I see 2 questions.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So let's start with the first one, which I see is from Matthew Gold, correct? A neurologist. True AI should be able to overcome intrinsic bias on an ad hoc basis as the brain is capable of if infrequently, and then given that much of the current AI depends on understanding a topic, how does a specialist in a field of knowledge identify an appropriate project to contract to offer one's expertise? Complicated question, but that's what it is. I've read it the way it's written.
I'll let Deb take on that one.
I don't know what. I don't exactly know what this means. Specialist in a field of knowledge identify appropriate project. Sorry, I think we need some more context. I don't know if the person who asked can speak up. I'll comment briefly on the previous, which is true. I don't know what true AI is, but to be able to overcome intrinsic bias as the brain is capable of. Well, another way to talk about bias is human judgment. And sometimes when we seek it, and it's a good thing, we say this needs human judgment. And when we don't like the judgment someone applies, we might say, well, that person was biased. So it's just 2 ways of pointing out that human beings, including their brains, come with different life experiences and therefore different perspectives. And so I don't believe the case that brains can overcome intrinsic bias. We all have biases, and this is why I personally think diversity of viewpoints, diversity of perspectives lets us triangulate on better outcomes. So the question is, if you plug in an AI and let it replace a person, what perspective or what biases, what judgment is it bringing to the table? Right,
that's a good point. In fact, related to that is a question from Diana Georgios, which is an interesting question. And it says, human making decisions use emotions and intellect. The quote, parentheses, the heart and the head together. Since AI doesn't have emotions, how do you teach them moral decision making? What are we going to teach them to value when we program their decision-making criteria? Interesting question.
That's a good sci-fi question.
Yes. Isaac Asimov loved that question, right?
Yeah. No, the foundation, iRobot, all that stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But no, I mean, I'll sort of I think you can create frameworks for the AI to operate in, and part of those frameworks, can have I guess, moral code around them. I think fundamentally, does an AI deeply understand anything? Maybe not. I'm not sure. I don't know the answer there, but I think you can certainly create guardrails, for an AI to think within a certain, a moral code or a certain ethic. But I don't think it will truly understand it.
Yeah, I think Diana's question is an excellent one. Difficult to answer. All modern large-scale AI systems involve some kind of optimization function. You set some targets for what the model is trying to do, and then you optimize. And there is a long history of optimizing for one thing, and a machine finds some way to optimize that function, but it leads to unintended consequences. And so, it goes back to this question of where do you embed this technology, and how is it deployed? So my own work really focuses on thinking about systems where the AI is part of a system embedded, in a human context. And the AI system is owned by someone, controlled by someone. One of the questions that is raised by these massive models is they're very expensive to train and maintain. And so with a tendency to want to use the most powerful models, most companies, certainly most universities, are unable to build these models because they're just too expensive. It literally takes, it can take, several $1 million to do one training run. And so you have along with the moral questions, it's like who controls them, and there's sort of power dynamics at play. So it's a great question. Anyways, there's a lot more to say about that, but yeah, I think
so we're almost at the end. And by the way, in about 2 or 3 minutes, I'm gonna take our panelists off the stage, and I can put everyone into what is called fluid space. And what we'll do is you'll see your image in a circle, and you're going to be in a sort of a virtual cocktail party, and you can move around by just using your arrow keys. You can go up and down, or use your mouse, and it's very straightforward. You can see everyone who's in the fluid space. You can see their names if you hover over them, and you can move towards them, away from them. And it's the closer you are to them, just like in real life, you'll be able to hear what they're saying. So it'll be exciting, and we're all going to end up in that. So I'm going to end with a provocative question, which I haven't told my panelists, so they're going to learn this sometime. Is AI in its form and things like Chat GPT, is it going to destroy companies like Google? Sam, you go first.
No, no. I think it's going to benefit. I think it ends up benefiting big tech. I mean, I think the companies that are sort of in the lead in certain verticals, like search, will maintain that lead.
Mm-hmm. Deb?
It's not going to destroy Google, because Google actually is one of the main sources of the models, literally, that OpenAI is building on top of, and powers their search. That said, I think OpenAI did some really smart work around creating the chat interface. And if you believe what you read in the New York Times, it has led to a code red at Google, realizing that from a product perspective, OpenAI did something, fast and clever that has gotten them on the defense. So could it, in the long term, chip away? Could Bing integrate the ChatGPT capability and create a search engine that starts to claw some of the dominant market share away from Google? Yes. Is Google responding? Yes. So to be continued, but I wouldn't say it's going to destroy it. There's a lot of momentum that.
Well, there's an interesting, one of the leading experts on disruption innovation is Chris Christensen, who is a Harvard Business School professor, and he had a book on the innovators, dilemma and so forth. And I think a number of companies are going to face that, where they are in the lead, but there's a shift in technology or innovation, and the key is how you react to that. And a great example that everyone knows about is both Netflix and Blockbusters knew that there was going to be a shift away from DVDs being mailed around or rented and so forth. And one jumped ahead, Netflix, to streaming, said, because it's going to happen, so I might as well cannibalize myself. And Blockbuster went out of business. So I think it's not a given who's going to survive, but it happens over and over again that innovation is both creative and destructive, and how you succeed is how you deal with reacting to those changes. So with that, what I'd like to do, first of all, just thank the two panelists. What a wonderful job you've done. I got to tell you, what a dynamic discussion of this very complicated issue. And I do hope that those of you who are in the audience come away with at least a little more knowledge and thought on what you should do if, in fact, you're going to pursue AI and data services as a career. With that, I'm going to end this session and remind the panelists to use that little arrow on the top left to get out of the backstage. And we're all going to go into the floating space, and we're going to look forward to seeing all of you there.